I wish I could say that the new Celine Deon commercial is simply a response to all those over-the-top gender reveal videos circulating on the internet. I wish I could say that a company that makes kids' clothes simply found a niche in the market, and in order to add some star power to their marketing campaign, they hired Celine Deon. I wish I could say that there wasn't something larger and far more diabolical than simply selling kids' clothes to rich liberal parents. But that wouldn't be the truth. If you haven't heard already, Celine Deon has recently partnered with a company called Unsettling to bring us a new line of gender-neutral clothing for kids and infants. On the surface, the meaning of the clothing line is to do away with the stigma that baby boys wear blue and baby girls wear pink. And again, on the surface, there's nothing wrong with that. If you'd like your baby to wear colors other than the typical baby blue or powdered pink, who's to tell you otherwise? On the surface, it's a great concept to bring to the market. You might be asking yourself what many others have asked themselves when they've seen this advertisement. Why is it so creepy? Why does she blow magical black pixie dust on these babies in the infirmary? Why are the babies wearing skulls, crosses, and pentagrams? Why does that onesie say New Order? Why are babies being presented to us wearing black and white and sporting occult symbols? The reason is far more diabolical than you could ever imagine.
The hips on the drag queen go swish, 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 swish.
Are we the hunters or are we the prey?
When we look at the new website, we can see that their clothing line is geared to sell to upper-class people. They hired a celebrity who appeals to rich people with liberal sensibilities. Their market is clearly defined. Other celebrities have also endorsed the gender-neutral clothing line. Now, you may be saying, I would never spend that amount of money on something my child is just going to grow out of in 2 weeks' time. But that's not the point. The point is that politics is downstream of culture. And if the masses see that Celine Deon and Kim Kardashian endorse the gender neutrality, they too have the moral obligation to endorse it as well. Psychologically, ostracism is one of our greatest fears as human beings. Celebrities like Celine Deon and Kim have the highest level of social acceptance. They are socially admired, and therefore they have incredible influence on the social conversation and popular culture as a whole. They are subtly saying here that if you don't accept their position on gender neutrality, then you aren't part of the in crowd. You're not hip to the new trend. You're an outcast. You can't afford the clothes for your baby, but it was never about the clothes. It's about the concept of gender neutrality and its widespread cultural acceptance. But why kids and babies? All across the world, there's a movement by the left to sexualize children. Let's take a look at some of the ways they're doing this, and then we'll get back to the Celine Deon occult baby Dracula clothes. It seems like every time you turn around, there's an outrageously nauseating story about the left pushing sex on kids. For a group of people who are outraged by everything from manspreading to Charlie Brown, they sure are tolerant of one of the worst possible things anyone could imagine. This teachers' union in Ontario fights to force radical sex education. They want to teach homosexuality to 3rd graders, masturbation to 6th graders, and oral and anal sex to 7th graders. When I was in 3rd grade, we would play on the jungle gym and pretend that the ground was lava. I didn't want to know about the various sexual preferences adults have. In 6th grade, jerking off wasn't a topic of discussion in the classroom, if it was a topic of discussion anywhere at all. And how did they teach this stuff? Would they show videos to kids in class of people masturbating? Did they demonstrate it? Sick stuff, man. Oral and anal sex in 7th grade? What adult in their right mind would stand for this? The next clip is called Snuff Puppets. I have no idea what it's supposed to teach, but in the video we see children playing around a grotesque humanoid creature giving birth while being hit in the head with a brick. What the hell is that supposed to teach? And why the hell are kids being exposed to it? That's in Australia, by the way. Next, we have the pedophile celebrities. Watch as these wackos in Hollywood give a standing ovation to convicted child rapist Roman Polanski.
And the Oscar goes for Roman Polanski, for the pianist. The Academy congratulates Roman Polanski and accepts this award on his behalf.
Polanski had sex with a 13-year-old girl who was passed out from drugs and alcohol at one of Jack Nicholson's parties. And here's Whoopi Goldberg's take on the issue.
Was not charged. I know it wasn't rape.
Yeah,
There is a
statutory.
child molest, maybe. I'm not
think
sure.
it was
Something.
no?
It was something else, but I don't believe it was rape. And
So it wasn't rape. But watch as Whoopi Goldberg defends Roman Polanski. In this whole entire video, she's defending him.
when we get all the information, somebody will tell me in my ear. All I'm trying to get you to understand is when we're talking about what someone did and what they were charged with, we have to say what it actually was, not what we think it was.
What he said he did. He gave her Quaaludes. He gave her champagne. She was drugged. She was 13 years old.
They were
He
having
asked her, here's a
sex
transcript.
beforehand. Sherry.
That's what I'm saying. You're 13 years old. She was still a child. He asked her.
Initially he was charged with rape. Go ahead. And then he pled guilty to having sex with a minor.
It's amazing how, when it's somebody on her team, the lengths she goes to make sure she gets the details correct. But when it's someone like Donald Trump or Brett Kavanaugh, she just throws them under the bus and totally just goes to words like racist and sexist and rapist without even caring to get the details. This lady is a complete hack.
Okay? And he went to jail, and when they let him out,
45 days.
and when they let him out, he said, you know what? This guy's going to give me 100 years in jail. I'm not staying. And that's why he left. So that's why I wanted to be really clear, because I wanted to know exactly what we were talking
And
about.
I'm going, does that make it okay to instead of staying and fighting, to say, he's going to give me 100 years, I'm out of here?
I don't know if it's okay, but what we were talking about was what he did. And that's what I wanted to clear up. That's all I wanted to clear up. Because I don't like it when we're passionate about something and we don't have all the facts.
Okay.
You mean the facts that you completely ignore when it's somebody else other than Roman Polanski? The facts that you ignore when it's someone that's not on your team, Whoopi? Those facts? And then you can see right here, it's like she's looking into the crowd, almost as if to get someone's approval, like a thumbs up, like good job. I think this whole episode was set up, and Joy Behar was going to play the side of Roman Polanski did something wrong and he should be in jail for it. And Whoopi's job was to protect him. That's how Hollywood works. This is all a setup.
Well, I have to tell you, again, we're a different kind of society. We see things differently. The world sees 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds in the rest of Europe. They're seen oftentimes.
I wonder what Donald would say if that was his 13-year-old daughter.
Well, Sherry, I don't know, but I do know that not everybody agrees with the way that we see things. Now, would I want my 14-year-old having sex with somebody? Not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily no. That implies that under the right circumstances, you would. I wonder what those circumstances are. Anyway.
It's not rape. Why? Because he didn't beat her up and force himself on her? If he did, then maybe Hillary Clinton would have defended him in court. She has a history of defending child rapists. And in Hollywood, this type of stuff isn't that uncommon. Or how about Salon and Vice doing a profile piece on one Todd Nickerson? Todd is apparently what's known as a non-offending pedophile. I'll tell you what, he offends me. but the left is pushing to make pedophilia just another sexual orientation. Here's Todd.
I am a pedophile. I'm not a monster. I have the attraction, but I don't act on it. I am Todd Nickerson. I'm a non-offending pedophile. I respect the laws. I respect society's position on this. I understand it and agree with it. I am part of one of the most hated groups of society. No question about it. We are the scapegoats du jour. If you look at history, there's always one minority that seems to be the one that everybody kind of persecutes, and I think we're it. People like me, we're non-offending pedophiles. Not all pedophiles are child molesters, and not all child molesters are pedophiles. Pedophile is, strictly speaking, is just somebody who has the sexual attraction to children. They may act on it, they may not. I don't interact with the public that much anyway. I don't go out of my way to be around children. If they're around me, then they're around me. It happens. You can't completely cut yourself off. My niece, then my friend's daughter did that one. A friend's daughter did that one, and then a friend's daughter did that one.
And they're okay with that?
Yeah.
They're fine?
Yeah, because they know I am no danger to them. I'm probably safer with me than they are with, a lot of non-pedophiles. I have a pretty healthy imagination. I think it helps me to process my sexuality in healthy ways that don't involve any real children. A lot of my fantasies actually revolve around kids who are more powerful than I am. This idea of super-powered kids, who are able to consent, who are able to consent, because they're just super smart, or, they could just crush me, if I hurt them. My family recognizes that I'm doing something important, that I'm kind of a pioneer, that I'm out here doing something that really needs to be done, and, raising awareness and letting people know what people like me deal with and what we struggle with. I'm happier every day, and I feel like I have a purpose now. I am neither proud nor ashamed of being a pedophile. At this point, I just accept it. It's who I am.
Todd went on to say that he would actually have sex with children if we lived in a more sex-positive society. Hey parents, Todd is also a babysitter for hire. Interested? No? What's the matter? You must be pedophilophobic. Pissed off yet? How about NBC doing a piece on national television about transitioning kids?
Tonight, we're taking a closer look at something that's been getting a lot of attention recently, the subject of being transgender. We've seen adults share their stories on television shows and in magazines, but rarely do we hear from the youngest members of the transgender community. Tonight, our national correspondent Kate Snow is here with one family's very personal story.
I actually agree with this guy right here. This is a very personal story. And that's the way it should have stood. It should have stood a personal story. There's no reason to flaunt this on the nightly news. And just curious, if it's such a personal story, and in the story you'll see that the parents moved, so the kids in the new school wouldn't know that this girl's really a boy or whatever. Don't you think they watch the nightly news, maybe? Wouldn't some of the parents see it and say, hey, that kid in your school, the one that's a boy that's really a girl, and it would just blow up in their face? The whole, your cover's blown at that point. So at that point, what's the purpose of going on the nightly news besides to just push this narrative in our face?
Kate?
Lester, good evening. By some estimates, there are 700,000 adults in the U.S. who are transgender. And while we don't know the exact number of children, increasingly families are going public with what it means to be a transgender kid. Sisters, and you're the brother, right?
Yeah.
Were you always the brother?
Not always.
What were you before?
They're a sister.
How come it changed?
Because I wanted to be a boy.
I hoped it was a phase.
Found him kind of poking at himself, saying things like, why did God make me this way? Why did God make me wrong? And I hoped that this obsession with being a boy would go away. Her need to play boy roles and her need to be seen or spoken to as a boy at home became very persistent and very consistent. Those are the hallmarks of a possibly transgender child. Consistence, persistence, and insistence.
She's telling you what the doctor told her, right? Because she came into this whole thing. This was all new to her, apparently. I don't know. But she's saying pretty much what the doctor told her. Consistence, persistence, insistence. You know, that's recalled knowledge. That's not something she knew. That's not general knowledge. So it just seems like she's trying to tell us that, you know, if you're seeing this in your child, then odds are you have a transgender child. They obviously know the statistics of transgender teens and children, and it's dangerous to let your kid think they're of the opposite sex. So you should hold your ground as a parent, and later on, I think your child will thank you for it. That's just my opinion.
And she was meeting all those markers.
Pediatrician Dr. Michelle Forcier says gender identity is formed very early.
It's not a fad or a phase. And I tell parents that even though they may feel or want to believe that.
I explained to him that we can bring you to a new school and everyone will know you as a boy from the beginning. Right then he said, that's what I want.
He said, I want to be a boy always.
So last June, they cut his hair short, asked family and friends to call him Jacob, and let him live publicly as a boy. He hasn't had any medical procedures, not on hormones, right?
Not yet.
That won't
Way too soon for that.
Way too soon for that.
But many doctors who work with transgender kids now support families making the transition at an early age. A startling 41% had attempted suicide.
We have a long history of children who have been shut down and told, no, you can't be a boy, or no, you're not a girl. We know those kids suffer, and there's a host of bad health outcomes and psychiatric outcomes.
People who are transgender face a greater risk of anxiety and depression. And according to a 2011 survey, a startling 41% had attempted suicide.
Ultimately, Jacob has made that choice in his mind and his heart. It's whether or not we accept it or not.
Accept it, that's right.
This really has been a journey for Jacob and his family. They have a long time before they even need to consider whether he wants medical intervention. Tomorrow we'll bring you the story of another transgender child. Tomorrow we'll bring you the story of another transgender child who's a few years older.
Apparently suicide rates, depression rates, and rates of drug use don't matter. They'll just endorse this madness on a platform that reaches millions of people. A story about parents who think it's okay to let their kids permanently and irreversibly change their bodies, and hormone adjusting prescriptions for children. This is absolutely insane. As adults, our job is to protect our children from people like this. And if we can't, then we have failed as a society and no longer deserve to exist as a society. In general, you have to be 18 to join the military, 19 to buy cigarettes, and 21 to buy alcohol. But the left wants to make it okay for children to legally consent to sex changes that will affect their entire lives. Where are the parents? What are you afraid of? The social pressure from other lunatic parents who go along with this insanity? Are you really afraid to lose a couple of friends on Facebook? You have to draw the line somewhere. And I think children consenting to sex changes might be a good place to start. Or do you absolutely lack a spine? Here we go, the celebration of child drag queens. Is this getting weird enough for you yet? Here's 10-year-old Desmond is Amazing.
It's 2018. There's gonna be drag kids in the world. And I'm one of them. I got into drag when I watched the first episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. I stopped playing with my toys because my mom was watching it. I liked how they looked so fabulous, and I wanted to be like that. So I would take my mom's towels, bed sheets, etc., and her heels, and put them on, and then walk down the hallway, etc. I would try to look like Courtney, but it would turn out to...
Get ready for this trailblazing 11-year-old drag kid.
I also do drag, and I love to put on makeup, dresses, and wigs, and of course, jewelry if necessary. I feel very happy to have a mom that accepts me.
That there are other children out there that he's reaching and they're listening to him and he's influencing them to be themselves.
Being a drag queen, by definition, is pretending to be something you're not. So how is he influencing them to be themselves? How are we so proud of him for being himself when he's pretending to be something he's not? He's a boy pretending to be a girl.
It just feels amazing to know that people love what I do. It just feels amazing to know that people love what I do. My mom doesn't like me drinking caffeine.
You're one of the youngest and first drag queen/kids. And I've heard young adults who look up to you for being who you are.
LGBTQ rights, honey.
They say it's not about sexualizing kids. Yeah, right. This is 8-year-old Lactasia. This is being displayed as normal. The left is normalizing crazy. The idea of gender fluidity is just another way of saying, I'm delusional, but thanks to some leftist word magic, you're the crazy one. You're the bigot. The idea of gender fluidity says that someone can identify as the opposite sex, and that's fine. Identify as whatever you want, but don't force me to call you a man when you're a woman. Don't make rules and laws penalizing people for misgendering you. If you identify as transracial, black when you're white or white when you're black, or transabled, disabled when you're abled, you used to be called crazy. But now that's considered bullying, intolerant, uninclusive. What's scary is that the social pressure is turning into legislation. Look at this. A progressive feminist was suspended from Twitter for criticizing the transgender movement. Here's another one. A Netflix movie called Girl features a scene where the star of the movie, a 15-year-old transgendered girl, is shown in a scene with full frontal nudity. The list goes on and on. This is Drag Queen Story Hour, where drag queens will come to a school or library near you and read gender fluidity propaganda to your kids.
Getting ready for work. A meticulous process that involves shaving, glitter, hairspray, and a wig. But instead of performing at a nightclub,
Hi, hello, and...
the venue is the Brooklyn Public Library in Park Slope at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Who wants to be a drag queen when they grow up?
Little Miss Hot Mess
Who is ready for a story?
is the host of Drag Queen Story Hour.
This one is called Worm Loves Worm.
Talking, singing, and reading
We can both be grooms.
to an audience of preschoolers, toddlers, and their caregivers.
The hips on the drag queen go swish, 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 swish.
The library started scheduling Drag Queen Story Hour last year
I'm a girl.
and is already looking to expand to other locations.
Drag Queen Story Hour is fantastic because it addresses all of these issues of gender fluidity and self-acceptance and all of these topics that are real, are very, very real.
And so is the backlash.
But back to Celine Dion's Celinunu clothing line. Now that you realize the deeper meaning of this marketing campaign, let's look at the symbolism. The black and the white. It's a symbol of knowing versus unknowing, of knowledge versus ignorance, of enlightenment versus darkness. Secret societies speak in symbolism, and they use this symbolism to signal to one another who's behind the work. Skulls, pentagrams, and crosses have also been used notably by secret societies throughout history. I won't get too into that, but you can do your own research there. It's a deep rabbit hole, but you can see these symbols in movies, art, and in architecture everywhere. If this video hasn't opened your eyes to the real meaning of this advertisement, then I don't know what will. These people are out there, and they're pushing to sexualize your children. There's a global agenda to police speech, and this is just another means for them to do it. You'll be kicked off social media platforms for criticizing crazy or any speech they deem as hateful. It's all a power play. It's all political. They don't care about ruining cultures because as elites, they don't exist in those cultures. To them, it doesn't matter. All they're concerned with is power. I'm gonna leave you with this little clip from Ben Shapiro. Regardless of how you feel about him, he hits this one on the head.
So tonight I want to talk about speaking from a common basis of fact. One of the big problems in our country right now, one of the big problems with our political discourse, is that folks are not operating from the same realm. They're not even making fact-based arguments anymore. One side screams something, the other side screams something back, and usually these are factless contentions about the state of the world, conclusory statements that have no root in reality. And one of the big problems with that is that when proof is then given of a particular position, this is considered offensive. If you say something like men are men and women are women, then this is automatically considered offensive because we're not operating within the same realm of reality. We're not operating on the same factual basis. We've not defined any of our terms. We've not talked about the parameters of the debate. And what this leads to is a lot of people who are very, very angry at each other. And before you can even have a political conversation about how the country ought to be run or about how you believe society ought to operate, you first have to be operating within the same factual framework. And so tonight what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and give you a bunch of facts, a bunch of factual statements that are based on studies, based on evidence, and then I'll draw my conclusions from them. And then if folks want to argue with the conclusions, then we can do that. And they can marshal their evidence, and they can explain where they think that my logic has gone wrong. But if we don't do that, if instead we just stand up and shout at each other slogans without any relevance to the public discourse, then we're not advancing the debate in any serious way. We're not having a discussion. We're just having a yelling contest. So I'm going to say a bunch of stuff. This stuff is probably going to be controversial because facts are now controversial. But fortunately, as we all know, facts don't care about people's feelings. So let's begin with the fact that is the most controversial fact on college campuses these days because sensitivities are very high and we want everybody to be treated with dignity, which is a good thing. But you can treat people with dignity while also respecting the realities of life. Okay, so let's start with a very simple fact. There are two sexes. There are not 9, there are not 11, there are not 15. There are 2. Okay? There are men and there are women. Now, the fact that a statement that literally my 2.5-year-old understands can elicit massive applause from an audience of over 1,000 people betrays how controversial this basic factual proposition has become. But it is indeed a basic factual proposition. Men cannot become women. Women cannot become men. Men who believe they are women are not in fact women, which means that transgender women are not real women. Okay, when people say transgender women are real women, they are making a contention about the state of the world that is simply not true. If you want to say that transgender women are men who have a condition in which they believe they are women, if you want to say that they are experiencing female gender and then you can define gender in some way that somehow makes sense, if you want to do that, that's fine. But if you want to make the argument that men can become women and women can become men and that you can use interchangeably transgender women and women, then you are making a statement about the world that has no factual basis. Okay, there are two sexes. People with a Y chromosome are almost universally male. People without a Y chromosome are almost universally female. The only exceptions, and the reason why I'm using almost in those sentences, is there is variation in a very tiny percentage of the population. These folks are intersex, and they may have primary or secondary sexual characteristics that do not match the presence or absence of a Y chromosome. This is not a third sex. These are called genetic abnormalities. Okay, they exist in virtually every aspect of life. In every aspect of biology, any statement that you make biologically speaking, there will be exceptions to that rule. That does not mean the rule does not exist. If somebody is born without a working kidney, that does not mean that kidneys generally do not perform certain functions. It means that certain people have a disorder of the kidney. Okay, if people are born intersex, this means they have a genetic abnormality, not that there are not males and there are not females. Okay, mammals are based on dichotomous sexual differences. Human procreation is based on these dichotomous sexual differences. This is uncontroversial in biological circles. But because people have decided they want a particular political outcome to a particular political debate, they've decided to go back in and rewrite the science. Transgender advocates claim that no evidence has to be shown of intersex genetics in order to determine if a person is indeed transgender. So that argument doesn't even make any sense. What folks on the transgender right side will say is they will very often say things like, well, there is a third sex, and that third sex is made up of people who don't match their chromosomal status. Okay, that is true, but that is not the claim that is made by transgender advocates. They say that even if you are fully biologically female in every possible way without an intersex condition, you can still be a male. Okay, this obviously makes no sense.
Please click the big red button to subscribe. It really helps me when you do that. And click the bell to allow notifications so you never miss a new video.